Family. All right, let me make sure things are working the way they should. And we can get this show started. So happy to be back with you for another episode of Swami Live. Interesting. Let me know, family. You having some issues? Is there interneting? Okay. Hey, is my do you see it glitching or something weird like that? What's going on? Wait a minute. Okay, thank you. Happy Tuesday. Okay, cool. So I was trying to be smart. I ain't even finna lie to you. Uh, so it's my spectrum acting up. I was trying to be smart and trying to make it where I don't know. I'm trying to get to that affiliate a little quicker. So I was trying to use my phone off of the Wi-Fi. So hopefully it would count as two people, as I got it on. But yeah, that ain't working. So we're gonna keep party going. Welcome to Soul Swami Live. So glad, like I said, so glad to be back with you for another episode of Soul Swami Live. If you are unfamiliar with Soul Swami Live, what we do here is create a space to be able to feel vulnerable and safe, to be able to have a space where we can connect with other individuals who are also on their evolution. Yeah, I'm starting to look. I can definitely tell I'm losing weight. I'm starting to look slim and trim. Okay. But anyway, a space where you can connect with people in the same evolution of becoming their best version of themselves. We do that so that we can make a collective energy and create a safe space for us all to grow, develop, and learn. We do that through live energy readings. We do it through interviews. We learn new information. We watch videos. We do homework and activities, several different forms to be able to allow us a space to grow and evolve. Hold on. You can catch us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Instagram. Hold on one second. Yeah, I ain't even gonna lie. I'm super thankful that at least on this show, I take it serious enough to fully dress, because I never know when I'm going to have to get up and walk around. And normally I work from home, and as long as I have a shirt on, life is good, right? So generally, the beginning of every show, we do a little bit of energy work. And this week, we are on our throat, right? The throat is the energy space for your authenticity, your communication, how you express yourself, and your truth. The color for that is light blue. So if you are in the color therapy, whether it be spending some time in the light, wearing some clothes, eating some food, light blue is the color that you want to deal with when trying to activate the energy of your throat. If you are into essential oils and aromatherapy, you want to think chamomile, peppermint, cypress, bergamot are all very good for, interesting, very good for your essential oils. You know what's funny? So I just really paid attention. So I'm going to start taking this vitamin supplement called citrus bergamot, right? And it is a good supplement for your. It is for your cholesterol. It help balance out cholesterol and things like that. But the ironic thing about it was uh, the throat, right? So what led me to wanting to take citrus bergamot is I went to the doctor and he heard a bruit in my throat, which is a swooshing sound along with your heartbeat, and it's supposed to signify if your it's several ways you can get it, but they just generally try to make sure that it's not connected to any closed arteries. So I've been getting tests for that. The ultrasound went well. I go back Monday for a CAT scan, something, whatever they do with the dye, I think. So we'll see, but I'm not, stressed like that. But bergamot is good for your throat. If you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think turquoise, aquamarine, lapis lazuli, and blue lace agate are all very good for your throat energy. The next thing we do is a little bit of sound, and I will use my small sound bowl, which is set to the key of your throat to help some vibrations. During this time, you just relax and listen to the sound as we begin to set the energy and the tone for. Yeah, well, maybe not that. No, it is that MRI. That's what it said. So I go back Monday. And I'm not looking forward to it, but we'll be all right. I'm not looking forward to it because I've had one before with that contrast. And the interesting thing about the contrast is it makes certain parts of your body feel a little bit warm. So I'm not looking forward to that, but I am looking forward to the healthy report because I don't think it is. That's that. I think it's my allergies bothering me, but that's one of the reasons I took the allergy shot. Again, we're going to do a little bit of sound therapy with my small bowl set to the frequency of your throat. Oh, nah, it's not loud because I need to release. That loudness always reflects the availability of communicating. That means we are communicating well. If it's low, that means we're holding back. So the loudness lets us know that the energy for communication is good. So I hope you all are tapping into that and using it to be able to communicate some of the things that are important to you, whether it's through expression of who you are or uh, being able to communicate your truth, right? So, and as you know, I just been telling anything, so I definitely haven't had an issue with communicating lately. So it's that's how I'm pretty good with the fact that the loudness represents things are going well. It took a little second. Right. I just put you all in my business anyway, so it's all good. Next thing we do is some breathing exercises. What you feel like doing, Liberty? Ooh, excuse me. I'm hiccuping. That must mean I'm still growing. You know how that goes. I always set this camera up so I can sit right behind the light. Okay. We'll do triangle. So if you are unfamiliar with triangle breathing, it is you breathe in for a 3 count, you hold for a 3 count, and you exhale or breathe out for a 3 count. But during this time, all you really have to do is just focus in on your energy, focus in on your breathing, make sure you connect with your authenticity, your communication, your expression, and your truth, and listen to the sound of my voice as I guide us through this breathing exercise. On the count of 3, family, we'll start. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Last time, family. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. And now I want you to repeat these affirmations after me. They are good to be able to balance out or calm the energy, reestablish the energy of your throat chakra. Incorporate these into your daily routines or some of your routines, whether they're daily or not. You just want to incorporate this so you'll have the tools to be able to help regulate the energy and the emotions of your breathing. Okay? So, repeat after me. I speak and hear truth. I communicate honestly. I live an authentic life. I am fearless and free. I trust what I have to say. I speak and hear truth. I communicate honestly. I live an authentic life. I am fearless and free, and I trust what I have to say. You know, I'm actually thinking that part of one of the reasons the energy is so good right now, at least for our throat, is I've been fasting for about 30 days. Right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. Okay, perfect. So I wasn't connecting it to the fasting, but as I think about it, I really do think the fasting has been beneficial. But before we do that, let me remind you that you can purchase the 7 spaces of healing to help you in your evolution of becoming the best version of yourself. These are 7 spaces that you want to cultivate within yourself and make sure that you are a part of the energy of these 7 spaces. Join spaces that create the energy for you. A space for love, a space for healing, a space for solitude, a space for trust, a space for risk without judgment, a space for accountability, and a space for forgiveness. You can get your copy now on Amazon. Available now. Buy one for your mama, buy one for your granny, get one for your kids. You know what I mean? Do what you do. Share, but it'll help you conceptualize these spaces. Like I was saying, I have been okay, so tomorrow is the end of is it tomorrow? No. Yeah, tomorrow's the last day of my fast. I decided to not really participate with Ramadan because I'm not necessarily Muslim. But what I wanted to do was be able to capitalize on the energy of millions of people fasting. So that energy can allow you to be able to get some creativeness or get some clarity for yourself. And it definitely has given me a little bit of clarity, right? So I think that might be one of the reasons why when we do our sound bowl thing, they've been going off extra loud because we're tapped into the universal energy of people fasting for various reasons. You know what I mean? So I think it's been good for that. So for myself, I think one of the major things that has become a little bit clear to me during my fast is one, I talked about it. I just said I can tell in the camera that I'm getting a little smaller, so I've been losing weight. During the fast, I probably lost 11 to 12 pounds, which is pretty good for me. But what it really allowed me to do is when I was fasting and clearing my mind, I'm not so focused on eating or my body processing food that I've ate. It really forced me to analyze my relationship with food, right? Oh, it's my mama's birthday today too, so give a shout out to my mama, Mama Swami, and I hope she has a great birthday. I know she's on the way to, yeah, I know her husband is doing something great for her right now, so he called me and let me know, but I hope she has a great birthday, you know what I mean? So Mama's on St. Patrick's Day, right? So, but the losing weight has allowed me to, and fasting has allowed me the space to be able to analyze my relationship with food, right? And 2 major things came out of this where I got a little bit of clarity. And one is how often I've used food as a crutch, right? A crutch for various emotions, right? What winds up happening is like I can always, the easiest one to be able to identify is when you're feeling a little bored, I grab me a little snack. But it really had me to be able to see how in my life why I've always had this fluctuation of weight, and partly because of my relationship with food. And even though boredom winds up being the easiest one to be able to recognize, the fast has allowed the space for me to be able to recognize other reasons why I turn to food, right? Some of those reasons include boredom, you know what I mean? Some of those reasons include sadness. They include a bunch of different emotions, right? And it ties into the second thing that I really learned during this fast, and it is around oh no, scratch. No. Various emotions. No, so the second thing is totally different. But it really allowed me to be able to see how I use food to navigate emotions, right? When I'm feeling depressed, when I'm feeling alone, when I'm feeling sad, even when I'm happy, like when something good happens, the first thing I want to do is like, yo, we gotta bake bread, break bread, building relationship with friends. So I use food in a lot of different ways that necessarily masks the emotions, right? So since I haven't been eating as much, it winds up allows me to be able to sharpen my skills and develop the skills of being able to navigate the emotions in a way that doesn't involve food. Now, I love food. I'm always going to be a foodie. I love to cook, all those things. Well, I don't love to cook. I love to eat. So I cook because a lot of stuff I want you can't really get at the store right now because my diet has changed so much. But I say that, and what was interesting for me is when I'm losing the weight, these emotions come to the surface again, right? So then that allows me to recognize how we say that we hide emotions in our bodies, and a lot of times we think about them in joints or we having organ issues or anything like that. But a lot of us hide emotions in the fat layers, right? So as I lose layers of fat, these emotions come to the surface again. And since I'm not using food as a crutch, it forces me to be in a space where I have to use the skills that we've been developing over the last few years to be able to navigate the emotions. I have to be conscious of what the story. I have to be conscious of my feelings a little bit more because, of course, the feelings are the stories we tell ourselves about these emotions. The emotions are natural, so now I really have to think about the emotions, think about my feelings, and then give me the opportunity to be able to change the stories that I'm telling myself about food, right? So like before, I used to tell myself when certain emotions come up, food has nothing to do with me using that. Food was not a tool that I was using to navigate emotions, but now I have to recognize that it is, right? I think the second major thing that has um, offered me some clarity is when I was talking to it's this idea that some people don't deserve me, right? Which is very interesting. I never really looked at it like that, right? So I was talking to my homeboy and we was talking about a friend of mine and some of the issues that we be having in our friendship and things like this. And he says something that's so profound for me, right? He winds up saying, he said something cold as ice. I ain't even gonna lie. That man was like, I hope they don't ever find happiness in their life. And then he changed it and said something that was very unique. And he said, because he's like, they don't deserve happiness. Well, he's like, I ain't gonna say they don't deserve happiness, but they don't deserve you, right? And I've never really looked at dynamics like something or someone doesn't deserve me, because I generally try to look at things as though I'm not better than something or I'm not too good to do something. You know what I mean? So I never really looked at it from the perspective of, does that something even deserve my energy, right? Because we talked about how we normalize our greatness in an effort to feel normal, whatever that is, to feel like everybody else, whatever that is. We do that. So in doing that, we sometimes tell ourselves that I'm not better than this or I'm not too good for this. But the thing about it is, when you really take the time and look at it and you just really think about it, there are certain things that we are better than, right? And it is okay to really believe that I am too good for certain things. I am too good. I am too loving. I am too all the things that make me great, or all the things that I find beautiful in myself. It is I am too good for some of the things that I interact with, right? So it also makes me see, by recognizing that parts of me is actually too good for certain things, it helps me to be able to recognize when certain people, places, or things are not deserving of my energy, right? The fast helped me do that because there were certain things I had to let go of because it no longer is deserving of my energy. One of the main things that we talked about, even though I wasn't never a real drinker, but I would drink a little bit. But now through the fast and other things, we recognize how that energy of alcohol is undeserving of me. You know what I mean? Not that I'm too good to have a drink, but I am too good for that, right? You know what I mean? We learned that we've gotten this healing. So certain things that we used to do, we have become a little too good for, right? So I want you to take some time, start thinking about, are you in a space where, in a effort to try to feel normal and to not feel like you are better than something, that you are giving energy in a space that is undeserving of you, right? So for our review, last week we did the law of polarity. The law of polarity, which is simply the extremes, left, right. You know what I mean? Black, white, opposites, right? So we learned that everything winds up having an opposite, and those opposites are actually two extremes of the same thing. Like when we talk about hot and cold, both of those are temperature. They're just two extremes of the exact same thing, right? We also learned that emotional polarity is a part of our daily routine, right? So we have to deal with emotional struggles. We wind up having to deal with the positive things that happen, and by learning the law of polarity, we move from that space of wanting to eliminate the negative, and begin to understand how it is a part of our existence, being able to find the balance in between two extremes, right? We also began to look at this spectrum between the two extremes as where we at? We began to look at this spectrum as a process instead of just an event or a place that we need to be in. We also learned to understand that in this space of appreciating and valuing polarity, that we don't want to ignore pain or suppress emotions, because that winds up giving more energy to the negative aspects, right? We want to be able to navigate them and deal with them and use the tools that we've been sharpening, and recognize how being able to navigate between them is also a part of life, right? So then we looked at the science that supports the law of polarity. We talked about neuroscience and saying that emotions are not binary. They are not on and off. They exist in continuous dimensions. We also looked at this autonomic nervous system, which has two main branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is for activation, flight, fight. The parasympathetic is for calming, rest, and allows us time to be able to digest what we're experiencing, right? We also looked at psychophysics, which taught us that perception requires contrast. One of the reasons that we can appreciate good is because we have experienced bad, right? So perspective, we build our perspective by comparison of that contrast, finding the differences or the similarities in our experiences. We also talked about dialectic behavior therapy. Was it BMT, behavior modified therapy? I forget what it is all the time. And that is, two opposites can be true and a part of the same system. Like we use hot and cold, light and dark, right? We're talking about spectrum of colors of light when we light and dark, or hot and cold. We're talking about temperature. We also discussed the implications of the law of polarity, in that growth requires contrast, right? So for us to be able to grow, we need some experiences to give us appreciation of the contrasting things. So, right, we can even appreciate the lows because we know what it is to be on top, right? And we also, as we'll go later into the law of rhythm, we understand that we will learn to understand that life moves in cycles. So even when we are down, yeah, that's one. But I'm thinking of another one too. So your cognitive behavioral therapy, what it is, I keep wanting to say BMT, but don't quote. Do, 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 do. We also talked about how resistance strengthens the opposite, right? So fighting the emotion often intensifies it. Fighting the anxiety makes you more anxious. Fighting the sadness makes you more sad, right? We also learned that small shifts matter more than big leaps because change doesn't require going from extreme to extreme, right? We It requires us to be able to go through the spectrum of emotions to get there. So we don't have to jump from sadness immediately to happiness. We can go through the steps that allow us to go from sadness to happiness. And that allows us to be able to appreciate our joy, right? We also learned that a lot of times when we find ourselves on these extremes, we also have to take the time to bring it back to the middle. I always think about that India Ari song, bring it back to the middle, right? Also, we recognize that our relationships improve when polarity is understood, right? In this space that we no longer see the opposite as enemies, but more as complements, right? So independence and connection seems as opposites, but they're the same on the same spectrum. So we can flow back and forth between independence and connection, and then a logic and emotion. We can do the same with both of those, right? Lastly, we talked about how it is applicable to our lives, right? It shows us change without forcing it. It shows us how to change without forcing it. We also talked about how we can use it to work with our own emotions. When we recognize it as one end of the spectrum, it naturally softens because we remove the pressure to be at the other end. So when we're sad, we remove that pressure of having to be happy, right? Because we understand that we're on that same spectrum of feelings, right? It helps us to be able to handle setbacks without identity damage, meaning that when we fail or have a setback, we don't internalize it as a reflection of who we are, right? We recognize it as a part of the process, right? To enjoy good, you got to experience bad, right? And then we also talked about several questions that we can ask ourselves to be able to assess how our relationship with the law of polarity. And this week, we are going to talk about the law of rhythm. Let the rhythm hit them, right? So the law of rhythm simply says that everything, move this up some. Excuse me. Everything moves in cycles. All things rise and fall, advance and retreat, expand and contract. Life flows in rhythms, right? So the law of rhythm winds up explaining that life moves in waves and is understanding that these waves help us to suffer less, adapt faster, and live with greater balance once we understand that life moves in waves. It's a part of life. And most of the time, this concept is difficult because we are socialized in a system that makes us think life happens linear, right? You take one step forward, you take the next step forward. But when we go through life, we know sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, one step forward, two step back. Life doesn't necessarily happen like that. It moves in that cycle in steps. Life is not linear. It moves more in cycles, right? That's why sometimes we find ourselves having a similar experience at a different level on that life, right? So if you ever experienced financial struggles, when you experience them, you don't always, the way you experienced it as a child isn't the same way that you experienced it as a teen, isn't the same way that you experienced it as a young adult, isn't the same way you experienced it as an older adult or even a elder adult, right? So we experience financial struggles like right now, everything has gone up. So it's put a little more financial pressure on all of us as a whole. So we experience that through our lives several times, but we don't wind up experiencing on the same level that we did before to help support the idea that life moves in cycles, right? So at any point, we can still be on the same, find up in the same event, but on a different level, right? Also, it helps us to be able to recognize how we struggle a little more when we resist the natural flow, right? So what is resisting the natural flow of rhythm? What's that look like? Common ways that we resist that is, perfect example is trying to stay happy all the time, right? One of the topics that we talked about on this show is the happiness paradox. And what that winds up saying is those people who chase happiness wind up being the least happy. One of the reasons why that is because just trying to be in a state of happiness all the time does not recognize, appreciate, or even allow space for you to be able to enjoy the natural rhythms of life, right? We trying to stay in a space that we weren't meant to stay in and all the time. So if we're happy all the time, what about contentment? Or what about disappointment? How do we learn to navigate these things if we don't have experience with them, right? And of course, sometimes we can learn through other people because vicarious learning is an important form of learning, but experience is always the best teacher, right? Another way that we wind up resisting the natural flow of life is judging ourselves too harshly during the low phase, right? Internalizing those setbacks as reflections of who we are. Having those setbacks become a part of our identity where it winds up making us feel as though we don't have some worthiness or we're undeserving of some of the good things in life. It's that idea that people tell us that suffering will get our joy after we pass on, right? As if our whole life is supposed to be surrounded with suffering. But even that idea doesn't allow for the greatness in life, because once that greatness shows up, we will resist it because we don't think we're deserving of it, right? So we resist the natural flow, the natural rhythm of life, because we judge ourselves too harshly during our times of lows, right? Another way we resist it is fearing the downturn, right? We learn in life moves in cycles. So a slowdown is a part of the process. And it is also a sign for us to do other things, right? But if we fear that slowdown, if we fear that downtime, we don't allow the space for us to be able to do some of the other things that the downtime allows us to do, like rest, right? That downtime gives us a break, right? Okay, cool. Let's make sure I ain't skipping that. Also, I want to be able to discuss the difference between the law of rhythm and the law of polarity, right? We talked about the law of polarity. The polarity winds up expressing or describing opposites or extremes, right? So we talked about it, hot, cold, dark, light, happy, sad. That's what polarity is. The opposites are extremes. But rhythm is the movement between them. Going from sad to happy, from happy to sad, going from dark to light, from light to dark, going from hot to cold, cold to hot. All those things. That's the rhythm. That's the difference between the law of polarity. Polarity is extremes, and rhythm is the movement between both of them. As you always remember, rhythm, having rhythm, generally deals with movement. When you talk about somebody's rhythm, whether it's movement of their lips and vocal cords or movement of their arms and legs to dance, that will remind you of rhythm, right? So next, what science supports the law of rhythms? Biology is probably the strongest support for the law of rhythm. What do I mean by biology? Our biology as humans is established by rhythm. So much of it that we see as natural is rhythmic, right? So one, we talked about circadian rhythms, right? I knew a lot about circadian rhythms. One of the reasons I did that, I talked about this before. I had this Samsung. It was literally the worst phone, one of the worst phones I've had. But I really did like this phone because it kept track of your circadian rhythms, right? What are circadian rhythms? Circadian rhythms are essentially that internal clock, right? And circadian rhythms move on a 24-hour schedule, right? It's the rhythm that regulates our sleep. It regulates our hormones, and it regulates things like our alertness, right? For example, circadian rhythms regulate when to release melatonin for us to be able to sleep, or cortisol to activate the energy within us, right? The next thing is ultradian rhythms. I really didn't know about ultradian rhythms or the next one after that. I only really knew circadian rhythms, but ultradian rhythms happen multiple times within a 24-hour day. Circadian, 24 hours. Ultradian is less than 24 hours. They generally move in cycles of 90 to 120 minutes, right? For example, the bird outside is going ham sandwich. It sounds like he's inside. I guess he wants to join the conversation. And I don't know. I was watching pigeon videos today. Of course, because that makes sense, right? But pigeons' nest are the funniest nest ever. They are like an ADHD kid trying to put something together without that focus. They just get a bunch of random things and throw them into space. Like when they teach us about birds' nests, and you see how they intertwine the twigs and make this little beautiful nest for the family to be raised in. Pigeons are not like that. They just take anything and just lay it down. They have a shoestring, a Q-tip, and just lay it down. They don't intertwine anything. No, it almost seems like none of the two things go together, right? So pigeon, if you have not seen a pigeon's nest, look at a pigeon's nest. I'm sorry. But a perfect example of ultradian rhythms are with our stages of sleep, right? We move from REM to non-REM to back to REM. REM stands for rapid eye movement, right? A lot of times when we're dealing with our REM sleep, that's when we're having dreams. Whether you remember them or not, you still go through these stages of sleep during the 8-hour period, right? You go from REM back to non-REM, from non-REM back to REM. That is a perfect example of stages of sleep, right? The next example of our biological rhythms are infradian rhythms, right? And what that means is they last longer than 24 hours. Circadians, 24 hours. Ultradian is less than 24 hours. And infradian rhythms last longer than 24 hours. The perfect example of a infradian is the menstrual cycle for our women, right? that lasts longer than 24 hours, and it goes through stages. The follicular stage is the actual bleeding. They have a name for that, which is follicular. Then they also go through the stage of ovulation, which is the releasing of the egg. And then they also go to the luteal stage. It's basically the uterus lining thickening, right? And this happens over and over again. Hey, listen, pigeons do make trap house bird nests. In the video I saw today, dude was just this the reason why I said Q-tips. I don't know if he's keeping pigeons or what, but dude just gave the pigeon a handful of Q-tips, and the pigeon just went and threw them down just everywhere, and didn't even like listen. The way the pigeon put the Q-tips, it didn't even block the eggs. So he just threw the Q-tips in there and then set on the eggs anyway. So it's they definitely do make a trap house bird nest. So again, Afradian is the perfect example of Afradian rhythms are the menstrual cycle of our women. Another science that supports this is physiology, and specifically this idea of homeostasis, right? The body, essentially, homeostasis, perfect thing. I mean, homeostasis is simply the body doing different things to be able to regulate, making adjustments throughout the day. For example, our blood sugar rises and falls throughout the day depending on what we eat and what we're not eating. Body temperatures are another example of how our body tries to create a certain level of homeostasis or balance by adjusting our internal temperatures, right? Next, what are the implications of the law of rhythm, right? One, highs and lows are normal. Breathe a sigh of relief. If you're in a no point right now, it's a normal part of life. And it's also a sign that the next step is a high. I mean, that you'll be moving to a high point at some point, right? Experiencing ups and downs does not mean that there is something wrong with you. They are not a reflection of you. They are the perfect example. They are an example of the rhythms of life that we live with every single day, right? Low motivation does not mean that you are lazy. Confusion does not mean that you are no longer growing. Emotional dips, feeling low emotional, does not mean that you are regressing. And I personally have struggled with all three of those things, right? In looking at myself, and we're talking about the evolution of ourselves and how we're growing. But when we hit those plateaus or those step backs, we always think of it as a reflection of what we're not necessarily doing and the pressure that we put on ourselves to keep showing output or keep growing or keep evolving, stuff like that. But the confusion does not, again, low motivation does not mean that you're necessarily lazy. It's a part of life, and it's a sign that there are different tools that you need to be able to do, right? So in understanding this, we want to make sure that we give ourselves less judgment during these low moments and more self-trust. Understand that we are doing the work. We are applying the tools, and our body, our intuition, our spirit, our emotional bodies know what we need, and it is creating a space for us, even when we don't consciously know what we need, right? We know that 90% of our reality is created by the subconscious, so we're not even always aware of what is motivating us to do these things, but trust in ourselves will let us know that our subconscious is doing the work, is recognizing the things that we don't consciously recognize, right? So in this space of understanding the law of rhythm, it allows us to be able to give ourselves less self-judgment and more self-trust, right? Which is what we're trying to develop it. So many of us have lost that trust of ourselves because we have experienced the lows of life and we've taken them as a reflections of who we are. So now we don't trust ourselves as much as we used to, because when we did trust ourselves, we experienced lows, right? But those lows are part of the experience of life. So we don't have to overly judge ourselves, right? We continue to trust ourselves as long as we continue to learn, evolve, and make sure that we are applying the proper tools for what energy we are actually in, right? The next implication is nothing lasts forever. So do not waste your time looking for an eternal state of happiness, right? Because happiness is supposed to come and go as well, right? So both success and struggle are temporary. They don't last forever, especially when we don't fight against the energy of them. When we fight against things like struggle, it makes us struggle a little bit longer. And that is because we are not using the appropriate tools for the energy that we are in. We're not recognizing the energy. Sometimes that struggle is a sign for us to be able to rest, relax, let go, right? But if we don't respect the rhythm of life, we don't apply the appropriate tools for when we experience those struggles, right? So when we recognize that both success and struggle are necessary, then we recognize that we don't want to cling too tightly to the highs or panic when we hit the lows, right? Emotional balance will wind up replacing fear and over attachment, right? Many of us fear the lows. Emotional balance will help us with that. Many of us over attach to there we go, G. 12 and 6. We talk about that all the time. I remember my homeboy, the shaman guy, he on Facebook. You not on Facebook. Liberty said, "What's up, G?" So he used to always say that. He's like, "Boy, when it's 12 o'clock for you, I know 6 o'clock coming soon. When it's 6 o'clock for you, I know it's 12 o'clock coming soon." Nothing lasts forever, right? And understanding that both 12 and 6, she laughing at us now, 12 and 6 up and down are a part of life. It helps us to not fear the down, right? And not overly attached to the up, right? Because a lot of times we also allow success to become the whole of our identity. So when we're not in that space of success, we internalize. She said, "She happy you came in to support, G." I know that's right. Hey, he be showing up sometimes now. Don't tell nobody. Don't tell nobody, right? The next implication is resistance increases suffering. Say it with me. Resistance increases suffering. Fighting the natural cycles of life cause stress and anxiety. It wears you out. For example, forcing productivity, even though it's a downtime for your energy, forcing yourself to still be productive in an energetic downtime creates exhaustion or burnout. That's why we wind up being exhausted and burnt out, is because we are applying the wrong tools for the downtime. We are pushing productivity when we need to be relaxing and resting and recharging, right? Panicking during emotional lows only increases your anxiety. When you start worrying about, now, how am I going to solve this problem? How am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? That only increases your anxiety. we can use that downtime to formulate a new plan, pivot and go a new direction, or just take a break. It is okay. We can give ourselves permissions to be able to do these things, right? Next implication is timing matters more than forcing it, right? Not every moment is meant for the same kind of action. What I've been trying to say. High energy, we want to create, initiate, and do things like desire. That's what high energy is there for. When we have that high energy, that's when we're supposed to go and get it. We're supposed to do that creation of whatever it is, the path for us to be able to the path for us to be able to make our dreams come true. We initiate, we create, and we decide, right? But when the time and the energy is low, that is a time for us to rest, to give ourselves an emotional, spiritual, and physical break. It is a time for us to reflect on all we have done. See if we need to make any adjustments. This is good for planning. It is also a time to integrate all the things that we have learned. We got this knowledge. Now we need to create a space to manifest it through our ways and actions, which is the wisdom, right? And that is how we get to our understanding, right? We want to work with life and not necessarily against it. And this is one of the things that I've struggled with, especially that timing matters more than force, especially for a person like me. I'm a person who is a fixer. I can solve broken things. So I feel like if it's on my mind, right now is the right time. But that's not necessarily so. It might be a downtime where I do need to rest, reflect, charge up. I don't know what the next thing is going to require of me, right? I don't know what the next activity, the next dream, I don't know what it's going to require of me. But the energy will guide me into a space to be able to rest and relax so I can charge up for that, or reflect on what I need to bring forward with me, or what I need to leave behind, what I need to integrate into my life, right? So we're learning that timing really does matter. There's a time to reap, there's a time to sow, right? Next implication is emotional stability comes from centering and not by trying to control a very natural thing, right? You can stop the pendulum from swinging. You can't stop the pendulum from swinging. It's going to go. Polarity tells you it's going to go to the two extremes. It's going to go from hot to cold, hot to cold. It's going to do that. You can't do that. But what you can do is reduce the swing by moderating the extremes, staying grounded, and not over identifying with either state, right? We're not going to be able to stop winter turning into summer. But what we can do is slow down the swing. Like, we can reduce the swing. For example, when it's cold outside, we use some heat, so it's not so cold inside. Or when it's hot outside, we use some AC, so it's not so hot inside. That's how it allows us to create a stability. That's a real life example of how we create stability that we can also in turn create in our internal selves, right? Next implication is do not make permanent decisions on temporary states, right? Decisions made at emotional extremes are often distorted. So when we're feeling overly happy, some of our choices won't be the best, which shows why we wind up having bad experience from good choices, right? Because we made that decision at the wrong energy, or When we're at the sad, we don't want to make a decision, a lifetime decision when we're feeling down and sad, right? Guilt, example, quitting when we're feeling low, giving up on ourselves when we're feeling low, when we're wondering why it hasn't happened for us yet. Hey, G, I wish I could pay you for compliments. I might need to change my name to Chef Soul Swami. You heard? You heard? Because we cooking up in every form, you dig? I appreciate you, G. I wish I could pay you for compliments, right? Or we quit when we're feeling low, or we have the tendency to overcommit ourselves when we're feeling good. That's the one that a lot of people fall into. And you don't know that they fell into that trap. They don't even know that they fell into that trap until they're not showing up for some of the things that they committed to. Like I say, I'm going to be here for this day. But what they actually did is overcommit themselves because they were feeling good at the moment that they were asked. And now that day shows up and they don't have the energy to be there, right? So we have the tendency to make good and bad decisions depending on how we feel, right? Next, growth happens. The next implication is growth happens in cycles. What that means is progress includes advances going forward. Progress includes plateaus. A lot of people struggle with that plateau, especially in areas like weight and losing weight. You lifting weights, whatever, getting strong, losing weight, you will always hit a point of plateau, right? Because that is a part of progress. Setbacks are a part of progress. Everything is not going to go perfectly. That's not how life works. That is not the balance of life, right? Setbacks happen. And integration is a part of progress. All of these things are necessary to create an energy of progress, right? You need to go forward. You need some plateaus. You need some setbacks, and you need to be able to integrate. Each one of those phases allows you to be able to utilize different tools. If you appreciate the phase, you will be able to see what is necessary during that phase. One of the reasons why I always say be careful for asking for patience is this idea of plateaus. Plateaus naturally give you patience. They force you to be patient. You know what I mean? You just have to wait until that time is over and you start seeing some new changes, because it's going to go again. That plateau does not mean you are not going forward, right? It's creating a space for you to be able to assess where you've already been. Instead of just going forward, you can't appreciate where you've came from if you don't have a space and time to be able to appreciate where you came from, right? Next thing we want to discuss is, all right, how is this law of rhythm applicable to my life, right? One, it explains why your energy and motivation fluctuates. We're learning that it's a natural part of life. So energy fluctuation is normal because each energy has tools that we need to cultivate and use as we move forward. It helps you to stop panicking during emotional lows, because you're at an emotional low. We understand the law of rhythm. We no longer get to this space where internalizing the low as a reflection of who we are, as a part of our identity, as some sort of character flaw. It is not. It is how life moves, right? Even if our decisions led us to this emotional low, when we get to that low, we have the time to rest, reflect, and then go forward again to make different decisions. It allows us to be able to prevent burnout, right? Why? because rest is a reward for a job well done, right? Right now, that's one of the things that I've struggled with the most, right? And even in preparing for this show, it allowed me to be able to reflect, right? I'm in a downtime right now. I'm not traveling as much for work. I'm not even posting as much as I used to. And it's natural for me to start thinking about how I am not necessarily doing enough, right? Like, I should be doing more. I should be doing more. But you know what this downtime allows me to do if I dive into it? It allows me to be able to assess all that we all have already done. You think about it, just as a soul family together, what we've witnessed career change within the last 3 years. We've had career changes. We started businesses. We've lost friends. We made friends. We wrote a book. We did all types of different things that required a lot of energy. So the reward that we get for all that effort that we put in is a space that allows us to rest and relax and breathe and assess, reflect and integrate all of these things, right? All these things. The rest is a reward for a job well done, so we can see it a little bit differently. Take that pressure off yourself to keep producing so that you can allow yourself to be able to learn the tools, sharpen the tools that you need to do in the other phases of life, right? Because output, just doing, going forward is not the only phase of life, right? It teaches us not to make decisions at the extremes. We got to let the emotional pendulum settle before we start making decisions, right? We don't want to make a decision when we're too happy, because that'll cause us to overcommit ourselves. We don't want to make a decision when we're feeling too low, because that'll make us wind up make a bad decision. We won't make the right decision because we are making decisions when we're feeling too low, right? This law changes how we see progress, what we talked about, and that is huge. All those stages of progress, right? Plateaus are a part of the integration, not proof of stagnation. Take that, use that. Understand those plateaus in life are part of integration, not proof of stagnation, right? That doesn't mean that we are no longer moving forward. We are moving forward. That plateaus allows us to integrate all the things that we have learned, to practice these skills, to exercise them, to strengthen them. It's like doing our emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical push-ups. That's what it is, right? It also allows us to improve our understanding of relationships, which is what this all is about. Our relationship with the universe, our relationship with God, our relationship with man, our relationship with woman, our relationship with child, our relationship with adult, our relationship with even our pets. It improves our understanding of relationships. Why? Because we don't assume that distance means that there's a disconnect anymore, right? A lot of times that distance is a natural recalibration. It allows us to be able to reset. That's where that idea of absence make the heart grow fonder, right? That distance allows you to be able to recalibrate your emotional connection, your feelings, your love for something. That time away can be beneficial, right? Especially when we put ourselves in a space to be able to appreciate that, right? We understand that distance does not mean disconnect. We can start applying a new perspective where that distance means recalibration, right? Now, lastly, what are some ways that we can assess how we are processing this flow, this rhythm of life, the law of rhythm. One good question is, can I identify the cycles in my life? Whether it's a daily cycle, a weekly cycle, whether it's a seasonal cycle, a 5-year cycle, or a 10-year cycle. And it's ironic because I'm more likely to be able to recognize the 5-year cycle, the 10-year cycle, than my daily cycles. I'm more able to be able to recognize the weekly cycles than my seasonal cycles, right? We can talk about this like a seasonal cycle is people spending more time inside when it's cold outside, right? And when it's warm, people want to be outside a little bit more. They want to feel the sun against their skin. They want to feel the breeze through their hair or across their bald head, whatever whatever defines their situation, right? We want to be able to do that. Can you identify the cycles that are occurring in your life? Can you identify them, right? Another thing to ask yourself to be able to assess how you are managing this tool of the law of rhythm is, do I stay grounded during success or do I over identify with it? Right? Personally, I have over identified with success to the point where even if somebody asks, I'm like, my resume stands for myself because I have over identified with the successes that I have experienced with my life, where I actually think that my resume does all the talking for me, right? Do you, or the times where I wind up experiencing failure, you begin, or I have, maybe you have too, begin to start asking yourself questions like, why me? Why again? Or you think I'm too old for this, or I'm too young for this. And that's not necessarily so because you are not grounded. That's where them questions come from. Those questions are automatic signs that you are not emotionally grounded. Because you're asking why when the why has already been given to you. Because it's a natural part of life, living, loving, learning. It is natural, right? Do I assume something is wrong during the low phases? Yup. As I just talked about, when we hit those plateaus or those step backs, we have a tendency to internalize those things as reflections of who we are. And that reflection is usually, what have I done wrong? Something's wrong with me. I'm not deserving of this, right? Do you assume something is wrong in the low phases? Or do you respect them for the energy that they provide for you, right? Many of us assume something is wrong. When we get that time to rest, our first thought is, I could be doing something else with this time. No. Yeah, I mean, you could. But what you should be doing is enjoying the rest, right? Enjoying the gift that has been given to you for a job well done. You get to take a break, right? You get to rest, right? Another question you can ask yourself is, can I rest without guilt? That's one of those words that we had to reshape our relationship with, guilt. And many of us feel guilty for taking time for ourselves, for resting, for saying no, right? So ask yourself, when it comes to the rhythm of life, do you guilt yourself for having rest? Right? Another question you want to ask yourself is, Do I recognize when it's not the right time to act? I personally struggle with that tremendously. As I said before, I am a fixer. So when I see it's broken, that's the time to act. But all the things, all the tools, or all the materials that are needed to help fix that broken may not be in play. That person may need some more experiences. That place may need some new hires. Can you recognize when it's not the right time to act? And when you are able to recognize that, are you okay with that? Or do you guilt yourself for not acting when you can see that there is a need for action, right? Do you feel bad about that? Another question you can ask yourself is my life weighted towards output or recovery? Many of us, our life is weighted towards output. Because when life gives us the opportunity to recover, we start thinking about all the things we could be doing, we should be doing, or we wind up cutting that recovery time short. We don't even give our body, our spirit, our emotional body, our physical or mental body the time to fully recover. Many of us move on quickly. We be like, I spent enough time in this space, so I'm ready to move forward, right? So is your life leaning more towards output or recovery? Or have you found a balance where you can appreciate them both, right? Another question you want to ask yourself is, can I allow space without feeling rejection? Many times, I understand, right? That fixed the thing. That's my thing. So, that's why it's a good question to be able to ask, because once you recognize what you're good at, you also got to recognize the space that to remain good at that, it needs time to heal, develop, and strengthen on its own. And that's when it's okay to take those breaks, right? And I think that fixer thing is in our bloodline too. Various people, especially our generation, we've definitely took it upon ourselves. We learned from the mistakes of the older generation, and we took it upon ourselves, many of us, to change the trajectory of our families in one generation, forgetting that it took generations for us to get to where we are. And the best thing that we can wind up doing is creating a space or the foundation for the next generation to be able to take the baton. We don't have to do it all in our lifetime, right? But our fixer in us will motivate us to do that, right? Or some of us, sometimes it triggers us because we don't want anybody else to be able to experience that brokenness. But the only way to really be able to understand how to fix it is to be able to recognize where it is broken and what broken looks like. Many of us don't even realize that we are functioning in a space of brokenness because we don't know what it looks like. We've normalized it. For many of us, it is normal to be in that space of broken, right? So we don't even know what it looks like. And for our immediate families, or what we create ourselves, we try to keep that from those that we lead, whether it's our family, whether it's our coworkers, whether it's healing, whatever. We try to keep that broken from them, but people need to be able to see what that looks like. So then when they see fixed and healed, they'll know what it looks like as well. They'll have a better chance to be able to recognize that. So Can you allow space without assuming rejection? Not always. And that's the honest truth. Sometimes I recognize that space is necessary, right? But a lot of times that space or that separation I internalize as a reflection of what I've done wrong. I make myself the main character in everybody's story and forget that in their story, they are the main character and they may need that space to be able to do some things for themselves, right? And we recognize that disconnect does not mean rejection. It winds up giving us a space to reconnect, like that idea of the absence makes the heart grow fonder. Last question, and it may be a tough one, but you want to ask yourself, what phase am I currently in? Are you in your output phase? Are you in your advanced, just going forward phase? Are you in your plateau phase? Are you in your rejection? Are you in your integration phase? Are you in your rest phase? What phase are you in? I know personally for myself, I can say when I take a step back and I look at all what's going on, I'm in a space of rest. We've done a lot of work over these last 3 years. We've done a lot of work to reshape ourselves and others. So the reward we get for that is an opportunity to rest. And sometimes that rest lasts longer than we thought we knew or than we thought we needed, right? But that's where that idea of trusting ourselves come into place. Our subconscious is creating 90% of our reality. I'm going to say that 1,000,000 times through the course of this show, so we understand that our intuition can be trusted, right? So when we have that space of rest, we know that our spirit, our emotions, our physical, all those things are still working for the best of us, right? So what phase are you currently in? Can you answer that question? Ask yourself that, right? And family, that is the end of this week's show. I hope that you learned a lot about the law of rhythm, learned how it is a natural part of life, and more importantly, I hope that you learn to be able to take a breath as you experience the highs and lows and as you naturally flow between them both, right? Thursday, we'll continue reading Changeling. So join us Thursday night by Victor Lavelle. It's been a great book. I love sci-fi, so hey, it's been a great book for me. If you can't make it here Thursday, catch us here Tuesday again at 7 p.m. Eastern as we discuss the last of the 12 universal laws. It is the law of gender, how masculine and feminine is a part of everything that we interact with, right? If you got some time, make sure you go support the Soul Family on TikTok. They should be doing a versus tonight. If you like that type of vibe, check that out. And if you'd like to join, then make sure you go ahead and shoot them an inbox and tell them you'd like to be a part of that versus thing. Go is Cat's Kitchen on TikTok. And before we go, I want you to remember these affirmations. I speak and hear truth because you speak and hear the truth. I communicate honestly. I live an authentic life. I am fearless and free. And lastly, I trust what I have to say. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your time and your energy. Don't forget to purchase 7 Spaces of Healing, available now on Amazon. Support the family, support your own growth and development. And I will see you Thursday or Tuesday, family. Thanks again for everything. And with that, I definitely say peace.